All right, welcome back. So in the previous video, we took a look at this whole session, and it was pretty much a breakdown in terms of some of the individual source tracks and how I had the mix laid out in terms of the bus structure and things like that. We talked about the folders and all the different areas that I like to make use of those things. I'm just going to take the automation off so it's more clear that this is a folder. But in this video, what I wanted to do is kind of go through the very first steps in terms of getting this session ready. So I'm going to open up the song notes over here, and I've made some notes of some things that I want to do in this video, which is we are going to make sure that our print group is disabled. I'll explain that in a moment. I want to render or merge any VCA automation. I want to freeze tracks, meaning that the individual source tracks that have plugins applied, I basically want to render that processing into the individual tracks. Then we're going to export some stems for our vocal effects, and we're also going to export some stems for different elements. So I have, for example, here the background vocals and the percussion stem. So that's what we're going to tackle in this video. So let me close my song notes and let's get started. First things first, I had a note to disable the group. When I do my prints in my archives, anytime that I create all the print tracks, I want to be able to activate and deactivate them. So notice here, this little pink label over here. These are all linked if I click the mute key. I'm going to open up my groups, and I'm just going to disable just this one group. So now what this allows me to do is we're going to be using the print tracks in place of the actual source tracks that were used for the session. So for example, over here, the bass track, we no longer need to use the bass track because it was using hardware processing. So we're going to do two things. We're going to be cleaning up this session. I'm going to right click, and I actually don't use the menu options that much. I usually just use shortcuts. So we're going to right click, and we're going to first of all disable the track. And then the next thing that we need to do is we're going to hide it. But also, I want to see what's going on with this. This, I don't need to have either one of these. So both of these, there's no plugins on this channel, but both of these, I'm going to right click now, and I want to hide both of these tracks. Now, in terms of our bass, we just have a nice clean sounding bass. Also, I want to make sure that I am going through that limiter because I noticed it was a little weak the last time around. So let's make sure we're going through that. Yeah, if I disable this. Okay, so I am going to leave that on, at least for now. We're going to be leaving that on. So that's our bass. We're going to go through and we're going to do that for every single archive that we have. So in terms of Wendell's vocal, right over here, we have this is the main track over here. We already copied all the effect sends over. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to right click this track and we are going to disable. And then once this is disabled, we're going to right click and we are going to hide track. I also want to make mention that I created a macro that does both of these together. So I think instead of, now that you know exactly what I'm doing, we will just use the macro moving forward. Okay, let's take a look at what else we have. We have another one of Wendell's tracks over here, which these are vocals. I'm just clicking to make sure that I copied over the effects. And another thing that's important with respect to effects is if I see read in any one of these tracks, I want to right click and expand the envelopes to make sure that there was no send automation or anything. Because if that's the case, then we have to make sure that we copy over the effect sends with the automation because that'll make a huge difference in terms of how everything sounds. But that isn't the case over here. I mentioned that I have a macro that does both of these. So if I select my macro, I'm going to hide and disable that track all in one shot. Okay, background vox, these are in a folder. We'll leave these for now. Background vox 2, our horns are in a folder. The horns, for now, we have a print that's already been made and we dragged over the actual effects chains. So that's a good thing. We'll leave that going for now. And then let me take a look at what else we have. Okay, is that everything in terms of our prints and archives? Okay, so that looks good. Let me open up my list again. So we've disabled the print group. Oh, we need to render our automation. Whoops, didn't mean to open up the video player there. Let's close that off. Merging the VCA automation. I really like using VCAs because when you use a VCA, you have the ability to automate tracks. Like for example, if we take a look at the overheads here, I'm going to just kind of explain this and why I do this before we get started. So if we right click and we can show hide the track-based automation, and let's make sure we're in the proper view. If I go to an area where there is actually some automation, it's kind of hard to see this. Here, maybe it's because my contrast is, but this is a good example. I'm not sure if you can see this. This little line over here. Notice that this is following the VCA automation. Now, in general, I like to use VCAs when I'm in the mix stage because what I can do is if I have a set of tracks where I want to automate them together, I use a VCA. But then when it comes to actually being able to adjust the static offset, if I still need to make adjustments, then that's something that I can do really easily. But in this case, I don't want to think of this as the mixing stage where I'm finessing and fine-tuning. I want to think of this as though we're happy with everything. The client signed off with this. So we have some read automation for the VCA overheads. If I right-click, we have the option to merge the VCA automation. Now I want you to take a look at what happens to these source tracks when I do this. So let's merge VCA automation. So now we have our source tracks are actually in read mode. The VCA went to a static level, which is, it's still connected. So we could use it to offset things, but I'm happy with that as a starting point. So we will go with that one, and then let's see where else we have a VCA in terms of any automation that's connected. What is this one connected to? We have a VCA that is connected to here. Sometimes though I have a VCA that's connected, but it's not in read mode. So really what I want to do is just, I'm going to the VCAs that have basically, that are in read mode, then I know there's actual automation that needs to be merged. If I right click this, show hide VCA automation. I want to see where this is linked to first of all. This is organ 4. Okay, so let me see. Actually, let me go to a different view. I'm going to just expand the layers. I've got a shortcut that allows me to do that. So now if I take this file over here, or this channel, this fader, I'm going to right click and merge VCA automation. Notice that that went into the volume automation in this track right up here. If I undo this, here, you can see it now. If I just zoom in just for a second, you see this gray faint line. Let's go back and now let's redo this. So we've merged that VCA automation. Okay, let's take a look at what's in VCA 2. VCA 2 is controlling RIC electric. So if we go to RIC electric, right over here, I'm going to expand these envelopes and let's just extend this a little bit. Again, really hard to see, but you can see this light gray line over here. I'm going to select this channel right over here, and we're going to right click and we're going to merge VCA automation. The idea is that I'm committing any automation that I had set with VCAs and so on and so forth. Now we have this one over here, and this is set to Wendell 2. Okay, let me see where exactly that is in the actual arrange window. Wendell 2, and where is Wendell 2? Okay. This one isn't as important because if I open up this track right over here and I go to Wendell 2, keep in mind that we printed this. So this actual print track, this already has the VCA automation that's already been rendered into it. So I'm not too worried about that. So let us just deactivate this from our view. And then in terms of this, we actually don't really need this at all, right? Because Vox VCA was controlling Wendell 2, but we printed Wendell 2 and it's in this track right over here. So for this case, I'm actually going to right click and I could probably just hide this track. We don't even need to see it anymore. Okay, let me close my track list and let's navigate a little bit further on down the line and see what else we have. Okay, we have another one over here. This is controlling all of my different effects. So if I scroll to this one, it looks like there's a cutoff here. So in terms of what this is controlling, this isn't necessarily automating everything. Again, it's a little bit hard to see, but if I zoom in over here, you see this faint line right over here. But regardless, let's go ahead and right click and let's merge the VCA automation as well. And now this actual automation has been rendered into these effects returns. I think that is all the VCAs. Nope, we have a horns over here. Now this VCA automation, it's controlling quite a bit actually. Again, with respect to the print that we made, the horns print, or the print that I made ahead of time, this will already have all of that VCA automation that's been embedded into the file, or it's been rendered as this was printing in real time. But what I could do is, let me see the best way that I can show this. Let's expand our horns folder. And if we take a look now at all of these, let's go top to bottom, right over here. I'm going to go into automation view. And now if we take this horns file, I don't think we have the option to merge it directly from within here. We do, merge VCA automation, we can do it. Notice, I'm not sure if you saw that, but we now have the VCA automation that's been merged into the actual source files. Okay, so that's a good thing. Now, also these all went into read mode. I'm not too worried about that either. The last thing I want to do, let's open up our console. So that was the horns VCA automation, and that looks like it's it. Okay, so we've merged our VCA automation. Now we're going to freeze tracks. This one, I'm going to go through all of these one by one, and we're going to take a look at what processing has been applied. So regardless of what's happening with this track, regardless of whether I have any missing inserts or anything like that, I can right click and I have the option to actually transform this to rendered audio. Now I'm going to go ahead and do this. It's been a minute since I've done this. I'm not sure if this is going to create an event for this and then create a new event for this one and a new event. We'll find out in a second. If it does do that, then what I would probably do is select all the events first, turn them into an audio part, and then render it down. But let's take a look at this first one. I'm going to right click and let's transform to rendered audio. I want to preserve the real-time state, and in terms of auto tail, let's just let's leave this on for now, and let's see how it goes with this very first one. So I'm just going to right click. So this is now doing 1, 3 of 11, 4 of 11. I'm not sure how many actual audio events that this is going to create. We're going to know in a second. Okay, so this has created a brand new file. Now, the other thing to take note of is when you render any track and you have plugins on it, such as we do in this particular case, take note of where this is sitting. And actually for these two, I'm just going to, just for the heck of it, I'm going to create just an audio part so that it's a contiguous audio event from beginning to end. I'm not sure if that makes any difference in the real-time preservation or anything, but take note of where the fader is here. The fader is at -5 and the routing is set to kick. So again, we're going to right click and let us transform to rendered audio, preserve real-time state. We'll just set this up like this. Okay, it looks like this is a little bit better approach because instead of having multiple different events, it is going to treat it as one audio file. Now, what I'll probably do, because this is pretty self-explanatory, is I will just kind of like go through this and render all of the individual tracks, and I will just cut back to this in the edit because there isn't really any reason to be watching me do all of this in real time. And also, if I run into any issues with anything, or if there's anything that's very specific to something, then I will make sure that I cut that into the edit. So I'll catch up with you in a moment. Actually, before I go, I wanted to show one thing really quickly. Remember that this kick track was at -5. When we chose the option to freeze this or render this or transform this to rendered audio, take note that our fader is now sitting at 0. Okay, so now I'll catch up with you in a moment. I'm going to cut in again here for a second. Notice that for these two tracks, the overheads, all I have on them is auto align. But remember that we merged the VCA automation. So that automation is now into these tracks. So these faders are being automated throughout the entire duration of this track. So let's take note of what happens when we do this now. I'm going to select both of these and let's transform these to rendered audio. And we'll give this a second as this is going through. This is going to take a moment because I forgot to actually group these into a track. So we'll let the first one complete. This is 10 of 10. And now it's going to do the second one. Going to let the second one complete now. And what you're going to see at the end of this is that all of the automation that was actually set on the individual track and the actual plugin processing has been rendered. So instead of having the automation and the read mode enabled, which is a little bit of a pain in terms of like bottling you or boxing you into a corner, now for these two particular tracks, we have two consolidated events, or rather multiple consolidated events in this case. But with respect to the actual routing, everything has been maintained. Even the VCA connection has been maintained. We can see that over here. But I'm just removing all the processing away from my actual system. And in this case, I might actually just do this after the fact. Let's just group these together. Okay, so we'll catch up with you again when I'm done. Okay, so I've just finished transforming these tracks, all of them to rendered audio. So any source track that had an actual, any plugins on them whatsoever, if we scroll through, if you do see plugins that are still active, that's because they're on a bus channel. Now, I'm leaving myself a little bit of wiggle room, and also I'm hoping that my system performs well in terms of allowing me to do this mix without it getting too congested. But I don't want to take everything off, and I definitely don't want to box myself into a corner by committing to stereo stems for everything. But there are a couple things that I do want to create a stereo stem for. So I want to export stems channels for all of the vocal effects, and I want to export a background vocal vocal stem, and I want to export a percussion stem. Now, I do have an idea in mind for the percussion, but there's a reason that I'm exporting the stem is because I want to be able to A/B it as I get down the mix to determine whether I actually like what I'm doing. So let's start off with the actual vocal tracks. If we take a look at each one of these over here, these vocal tracks, I'm just going to open up the console for a moment. We'll do that just by double-clicking over here. If we take a look in terms of what's using this, we have quite a few different things that are using this. So we have Wendell 2, Wendell ad-libs, and then we have the Prince. Now, the Wendell 2 and the ad-libs, they're no longer active. We have actually deactivated those. So it's mainly going to be the Prince that are using these vocal stems or these vocal effects, but I still want to be able to transform them to audio because I want to leave ourselves with a little bit of flexibility, a little bit downstream. In order to do this, all we need to know is basically we need to know the name and the color of the track. So I'm going to go to Song, and we're going to Export Stems. Now, in this case, I'm going to make sure that I'm on Channels, and I'm going to click None, and then I'm going to scroll all the way down till I find the colors, and I find these. So we're going to do these 4 right over here. We're going to do plate verb, micro shift, echo slap, and quarter. I don't need a file name prefix whatsoever. We're going to go wave 2448. In terms of the cycle range, we'll do before or between the loop. Actually, let me make sure that I should have made sure that this was. I always like making sure that my export range is at the very beginning of the track. And let's export this a little bit longer. So we'll go back into our export stems. And let's find them again. They're still selected. Perfect. So we're doing plate verb, micro shift, echo slap, quarter delay, no prefix, 2448 between the loop. And the big thing here that I want to do is I want to import these back into the actual track. So we will go ahead and let these run. It'll give this a moment. This is going to happen obviously offline, and this will be really quick or a little bit slower depending on the speed of your system. And then after this, we just have a couple stems that I want to do. I want to do the background vocal stem. And then in addition to that, I want to do a percussion stem. Keep in mind, we already have a stem printed for our horns. The guitars and the keys, there's not that many tracks. So we are going to just work with those source channels, or we can route directly from the bus the minute we take this into Atmos. So we'll give this a moment. Okay, perfect. Now, the way that this places things is that it automatically kind of puts them at the end. I want to give these the same actual color, and also I want to move them up. So let's close our console for a moment. I want them to be directly underneath exactly what they are. So these ones all over here, I'm going to make sure that they all have the same color, which in this case was, let me just select this one, see if I can get a color. I think it was this orange color over here. So let's select all of them right over here, and I'll right click, and I'm going to make these all orange. And then I'm just going to place each one of these directly under where it belongs. So if we want to do anything where we're routing anything, or we want to upmix these or anything like that, or spread these out with the panner, we can do that. But also they're still running real time if we need to. Also at this time, I think it's a good idea to do a new version. So I'm going to do save as. And let's call this 6.6, and we're going to say underscore, I guess we can say frozen or tracks freeze or rendered or something. Let's say rendered, and we will have to give this session a new name as well. So we'll go ahead and do that save right now, because in case anything crashes, we want to make sure that we have a backup. Now let's see what we have left, okay? We just need to export our background stem and export our percussion stem. Typically speaking, whenever I export stems, I always like to use the channels option. There's a reason for this, because usually I would build in my routing into my session template. But let's say for a moment that you needed to export a vocal, okay? If we take a look at this vocal has 4 different effect sends on it. So in terms of what makes up the sound of this vocal is actually the dry vocal plus a micro shift, an echo boy slap, a plate verb, and then a quarter note delay. If I wanted to export this particular vocal and I wanted to have it be a stereo stem, for example, but I wanted to have everything in the sound, then I would go to the export stems option and I would choose tracks, and then I would choose none. And then all I have to do is find the actual name of the track, which is Wendell Adlibs Print V1.0D. I'll scroll down here. This one. If I chose the tracks option, this would have all of the effects embedded in it. But what I'm doing is I want to choose to leave some flexibility. So I'm going to actually do something separate. So in terms of what we are exporting right now, We know that we have our background vocals. We have background vocals 1 and background vocals 2. What else do we have? We have BG Vox 2. What is this taking? This is taking all the chants. So we have background vocals 1, and we have background vocal. Okay, so we have more than one background vocal. We actually have 3 different, actually no, this goes to something else. What does this go to? This goes to background vocal 2, which is here, background Vox 2, and then background Vox 2 goes to the mix bus. So what I think we'll do is we'll export BG Vox 1 and BG Vox 2, because keep in mind, all of these have different things that are routed to them, and I want to kind of make this easy for myself because I'm pretty happy with the sounds in general. Also, we have lots of different effects, and we have some sends that are going to be part of this. So this is going out to the plate verbs and stuff like that, but we can copy these over if we need to. So the first 2 that we'll do is that we'll do those 2, but also we need to do, where is it over here? I think I usually put my percussion after. Here's my percussion folder. This has got a lot of different things in it, and this has a couple sends. So what we'll do is really quickly, I'm going to open up the console, and I want to see where the reverbs are coming from in terms of the percussion. Usually if I wrote things to a bus, I usually have it so the reverb comes from the actual bus as opposed to the source tracks. Sometimes I break that rule, but in general, I like to work this way. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to go back to Export Stems, and we need 3 different tracks. So first of all, we need perc, which is a bus. So we're going to go into the channels mode because we want it to respect the console's routing. And then we'll make sure that none is selected. And let's go over here. We're going to export perc. And then we needed the 2 folders that are BG Vox 1. And also we needed BG Vox 2. And I'm pretty sure that should get us everything. It's too bad we're locked out. We can't scroll a little bit further, but I think that's going to get us everything. Let's delete the file name prefix between the loop, and we want to import these back into track. So 2448, double check. I am going to double check though the chants. I'm just going to double check the routing of that. But now that we have those 3 done, let's go ahead and render those 3 stems. Okay, so what have we done here in our session? Well, we started off with merging the VCA automation because I really don't want any tracks that have read automation in case I need to rebalance something. We rendered that in, then we froze all of the plugin processing that we did on the individual tracks so that we're kind of freeing up our CPU. And now we're just making some prints. So we now have a background print for everything. Now I'm going to take BG Vox 1 and BG Vox 2, and I'm going to drag them directly by the tracks that they are part of or the tracks that they belong to. So now we have these 2. I could even make sure that the color is all the exact same color. So if we go to purple, one thing that I could also consider doing is I just want to click, hold, and drag. Whoops, click, hold, and drag right from here. I'm just dragging the effects chains. So now technically speaking, if I needed to free up resources on my system, I could take both of these tracks and disable them. And then we would have the exact same mix. Okay, the only other thing I wanted to take a look at was that the chants are actually routed to this BG Vox 2. Okay, so we're good there. And then the last one we have is the percussion. I'm going to just drag and drop this over here. And our percussion was at the, I think it was towards the beginning of our song. Maybe we'll, I need to give myself a little bit more room. Also, let's close our channel list and also our groups list. I need to drag this all the way back. So we'll drag this all the way to, where was it? I'm pretty sure it was, yeah, here it is. I should have done that from the arrange window. It would have been a lot easier, but here's our percussion print, and I want these to be the same color. So we're gonna go with this orange. This is the orange color that we use for the percussion. So now again, click, hold, and drag. Oops, click, hold, and drag directly from here. And now if I need anything, or if I need to disable all of the percussion, I can if we want to use the stereo print. But it's basically set up. We will do a save here. Make sure that we're good. And I guess the last thing that I might consider doing is anywhere that I did do a print, let's for now just disable this track. So I'm going to disable the percussion print, and then I'm going to disable all of these over here. I'm going to leave them visible, but I'm going to disable them because I want to know that they're directly underneath there. And then the last 2 that we had was our BG Vox 1 and our BG Vox 2. Those are these 2 right over here. Let's right click. And actually, before we do that, let me open up the console. Yes, we did copy over our effects chains. So we're going to right click and we are going to disable these ones, disable selected tracks. Okay, now we're going to save. So that seems like it was a lot of work, but it's only kind of really a lot of work because I was talking about it. I think that it's the best approach for this particular mix. But you don't have to overcomplicate things. I could have easily exported a stereo stem for my subgroups and brought in 10 groups and done an Atmos mix. Or I could have exported a stereo stem for every single one of these tracks and then ignored the buses. Or I could have exported the bus and ignored all the source tracks, which we've kind of done here to an extent. So I think this is a good spot to leave it. In the next video, we will take a look at actually setting up the session, the Studio One session, and bringing this into Atmos. Okay, so we'll catch you for more in the next video.